It is my pleasure now to introduce you to our panel. We have Sandy Anderson, the owner of Riverdale Travel. We have Tami Klimpel, the Vice President of Digital Marketing with Bremer Bank. We have Jill Renslow, Senior Vice President, Business Development and Marketing with the Mall of America. And to moderate our discussion today is Bruce Nustad, the President of the Minnesota Retailers Association. So please welcome me and please join me in welcoming them all.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good afternoon. Can everybody hear me okay? Are we good? Fantastic. Thanks so much for having me out and the group to talk a little bit about retail today. Retail is a fascinating environment right now, and I think you'll hear that through each of our panel members, but I want to thank our panel members for being here and sharing their experience. Honestly, every moment that a retailer takes away from their store or their operation is sometimes felt like it's a moment lost, but that is not the case today, because our job is to sort of help you understand some of the challenges, some of the opportunities, some of the changes that are going on in the industry. Kim, I love that you mentioned how retail is so important to this area. And it's actually really, really important to Minnesota too. There's about 750,000 jobs that depend on the success of retailers, not only those sitting at the table here, but across the state. And it's about 20% of our economy. So a strong, vibrant retail sector is really, really important. And as most of you know, just a quick raise of hands, who had their first job ever in retail? Like your first job? Usually about 50 to 60% of folks in a room will say, my first job was in retail. And honestly, retail is interesting from a career perspective because it does give you that ladder type of opportunity. You can start out on the floor working at a retailer or in a small shop. Am I supposed to talk louder? Yeah. Very good. Okay, Pat. You can start out just at an entry level and really work your way up into some fabulous positions, some that you'll hear about today anyway. But just to get us level set, I want to mention that retail today is completely different than retail 20 years ago. And to be honest, retail 20 years ago used to be about figuring out how you build your retail operation so that it works for you as a retailer so you can make some money and serve customers. So the good part of that is serving customers is still the end result. But today it's a little different. It's really how can you serve the customer so you can make a little money, employ some people, and do good in your community. So I think what you're going to hear about in some of this transformation today is how technology is fueling a piece of that. So I'm going to start out with our first question. We're going to go through some panel activities here for 20 minutes, a half hour. Then we'll certainly take questions from you. But I just want to start out with our panel. Sandy, we'll start with you. Thank you. We'll start with Sandy. So I'm thinking back to 1989, and I went to college, and I saw my first computer. So the world has changed a lot in those however many years that is. Just give us a moment to tell us about your industry and how it's changed from a technology perspective, given the evolution of technology in the last 10, 15 years.
Well, I think most of you have questioned how can travel agencies still be around with the internet. This is the first thing when the internet came out, which I really was hoping would be a fad, but it's not. What we really did was embrace it. Because the first thing everybody looked at on the internet really was beaches, your bucket list places. You were thinking how wonderful it would be to get on an airline and fly, because before you always had to pick up the phone and just call someone who was doing administration, taking your reservation. And how it's really evolved in my business is, well, first of all, in the state of Minnesota, there are 25,000 travel agents. So we have not gone away. And I think some of you are like, are you still in the business? Well, we've evolved into, most of my staff have their undergrad degrees, some have their master's degrees, because we have embraced the internet. We build a relationship with you on the internet. It's how you come into our store. Instead of just walking into my brick and mortar, which I do have, and I also use in Minneapolis a shared industrious office space, because I believe millennials are really comfortable in that space. But it's how they come into your store, and they come into our stores, they crawl on the internet, and they get to know our expertise and our staff by looking at the internet. And that's what's going on today, and tomorrow there's a whole nother conversation about artificial intelligence and how we're working with the traveler on and incorporating that, and then also ways of processing money and identity and things like that. So,
Great.
yeah.
Tami, how about you next? Now, banks serve a lot of customers, so undoubtedly you're a great retailer, but you also work with retailers, so it probably provides a little bit of an interesting perspective. But how has the change in technology over the last 20 years impacted banking?
When I started, it was 21 years ago, and there was no smartphones, there was no Amazon.com. If you wanted to interact with your bank, you came in, and that's how it worked. And my husband's a small business owner today, and now we're looking for ways to not go to the bank. You're looking for ways to stay at your office. And so banks are really being challenged in terms of the scope or geography of where we offer our services. And for instance, as we serve retailers and fast food restaurants, we really looked outside the box for ways to let them deposit their cash on site. We actually, banks are starting to launch virtual vault services, Bremer Bank among them, where a retailer can do their deposits and have it count straight into their balance right there at their store. We're trying to meet our customers where they are. And it's not always about us being this brick and mortar retailer, and we have the flexibility of not having, a product on the floor that you really have to come and take and go to a register and purchase. We can have a one-to-one discussion, and it can be really anywhere. So it's changed the dynamic of how we think about our office space and what we use our branch network for and what it looks like.
So Jill, obviously the mall is a retail destination, and a lot changes there every year, and you've tried a lot of different things in technology over the years, but just tell us from your perspective, counting from the days of just a pure brick and mortar mall to today's virtual mall and how you interact with your customers, what's changed?
Absolutely. There's been a lot of change. And first of all, we love having our home in Bloomington here in Minnesota. It's a fantastic community to be part of. And we've been around for 26 years, and there's been a lot of change. And right now we're experiencing change in a very different way of how online shopping is emerging with brick and mortar. But there's, there are headlines out there of retail closing and bankruptcies taking place, but it's also pushing new brands to brick and mortar. The emergence of online brands coming to the physical space is an exciting time, and for brands to understand that balance of what they need to have online and what they need to have in store is where you're seeing great success. Amazon has pushed us to think differently, and they simplified the process, and now consumers are expecting other brands to deliver that same simplicity and seamless experience. And so it's pushing brands to really understand what that online experience should be. But just like Amazon, they're opening up brick and mortar stores. They understand that value of how you need to connect with consumers on a physical basis and how you can deliver your brand experience in a physical brick and mortar space. So seeing that they're evolving in that space as well, we're hitting this point, and it's kind of settling in on where we're seeing where online's going to live, but yet we're all human. We love the interaction, the social components, and the instant gratification we can get from brick and mortar. So it's not dead, it's thriving, and it's evolving in a new and exciting way. And that's what Mall of America has been from day one. We've been about the experience. It hasn't just been about retail, but when you start packaging it and layering it with all the different elements with attractions and dining and entertainment and now hospitality and office, that's where magic starts happening. So we're excited about the future, and change pushes us. We thrive on change at the mall, and I know a lot of our partners do as well, and that's what makes us all stronger and better together.
Let's stick just with customer expectations for a moment, because each of you mentioned that. Give us a couple things from your perspective that are really important relative to technology and customer expectations. In fact, maybe try to be specific. Like, what do you do that helps meet the customer with what they expect? Jill, you've got the mic. We'll start with you. Yep.
You have to really understand and listen to the customer, and the best way to do that is to truly have channels set up that your brand can interact and build relationships. You want to really provide convenience. We're all super busy, and we want to be able to be a brand that can solve problems and help make consumers' lives easier. A few years ago, we launched our Communication Command Center. We call it ESP, Enhanced Service Portal, and it truly is a digital concierge that connects our brand to consumers. So consumers can connect with us through social media channels, through email, through text messaging, whatever channel they prefer. And they have a direct access to a human being to answer questions. And so they're looking for a new store, or they're looking for a gift idea for the holidays, or if they're looking for a restaurant reservation, we'll take care of them. Because we want to make sure that no matter what brand they're interacting with at Mall of America, over 500, we want to make sure that they're still having a great experience at Mall of America. So we're there to answer their questions. And what I'm very proud of is our team replies in less than a minute and a half to any inquiry that comes in. And that is then integrated into all of our channels throughout the mall. So if you guys have been on our digital directories, or if you've seen our robotics, our Pepper robot, whatever that might be, it's all back end in the same system. And so you're getting the same answers. And now out of operating hours, so if you contact us overnight, if you're planning and ready to go for your visit to the mall the next day, we do have a chat bot. And you're gonna see more integration with AI, with artificial intelligence and machine learning as you move forward, and brands are really starting to figure out what's the best play for them, because you don't want to take away from the human element, but you also want to be able to deliver the service anytime, anywhere. And so we found a lot of success on building those relationships with customers and being very genuine and purposeful in that effort.
Tana?
I'd say our approach is really about being digital where the customer wants it. Our expectations have changed, and I don't want to go stand in line at a teller line to make a deposit. And that's me. I work in the bank retail, and I don't want to do that. So we need to make sure we're offering those kinds of simple services, the things that you feel that, gosh, I should be able to just do this myself, not take time out of my day. And so there's one whole prong of delivering digital solutions that are doing what you want it to do. But separately, in terms of being a relationship management business and focused on business and ag and wealth clients across our footprint, we have to really challenge ourselves as staying true to being a relationship bank. And our areas of expertise where we have to focus on are changing. And we are educating people across the enterprise about the specifics of our unique customer segments. It's not just about knowing banking and the minutia of the millions of regulations that apply to us and how to follow the appropriate procedure to open this account or that account. We've got teams who are being challenged to know not just our bank products, but they have to understand what the CFO of a $50 million manufacturing firm is encountering on a daily basis and what the pain points are. So we're really just trying to elevate that level of expertise and knowledge across the organization so that we can talk in an educated and meaningful manner when it is needed. Because we're dealing with a lot of high profile finance, and we need to be able to have those discussions. And those are a one-to-one engagement, those are relationship management. It is also going to be digital delivery of content and sharing in other different ways, but just continuing to know our customer and meet them in all the right places.
Well, from beginning to end, the travel process is pretty digital. People come to our store, either they walk in and they sit down with our agents, and we work digitally to find the vacation they want or the place they're going. We work with them, and then when they leave our store, we have our mobile app where if they're in Tahiti and they didn't get the overwater bungalow, we know about it right away, and we can fix that through our connections and our knowledge. Even, I'm up at 2 in the morning, but that didn't get taken care of, but we always have that backup with our technology, with our mobile app, with the email, with other types of things. And I see that going to a different level once we incorporate our artificial intelligence into how we deliver it in a retail setting for the traveler. Many of you are even experiencing some of that now. If you've seen the Alexa, where do you want to go today? I want to fly from here to Honolulu. Should we go there?
Yes.
And it'll take the information and create a ticket. Well, to me, I could look at that and say, that's going to take my business away, just like the internet was going to. But for me, I would say, how can I bring that to my customer who I've worked with for 32 years, and their families and their children, and make it part of their experience to get the best vacation? Because our time that we spend on our vacation and the money we spend are so precious to us. So it's my responsibility to change and embrace these things. I'm also thinking I'm also thinking blockchain will eventually be part of my business in terms of processing financials. People are now demanding, it's not just a package anymore where you get on an air. My number one destination used to be Las Vegas, okay? And now it's, Europe probably today, I would say. And it's very challenging. We work with in-country partners where they come up with experiences for you that you can't just buy off a shelf like you can a pair of socks. So we have contacts in the country, say you're going to Malaysia because you're researching something, and we have to send money to them direct. And now we do wiring, and it's a wonderful service, and I'm glad there are things in place because of identity and fraud. And I'm just hoping that this piece of technology will get through some of that. So I really see that as a real important part in the future.
Great, thanks. Quick poll in the room here. So at the Retail Association, we define retail as anybody who sells something to a person. So it takes out your B2B stuff. So raise your hand if you are a retailer. Okay, I'm going to give you another minute because somebody out there is thinking about that a little bit. I guess I do sort of sell stuff to people. But, I think one of the things where we get caught up in technology is the stories we hear in the media are about these really big systems, and sometimes we think they're expensive. So if you had your hand up and you're in retail, raise it again if you consider yourself a small retailer. Right, so where we get caught up sometimes is sort of translating some of these trends into what works at a small retail level. And the reality is you can actually do it, and there's a lot of people to help you do that. And so Jill, actually I'm going to start back with you just because the mall is an interesting model, because not only do you kind of appeal to a consumer as a retailer, but really you're helping your partners. So just tell us just a minute what you do to help your partners be successful and grow within your environment from a technology perspective.
Partners as in our tenants?
Yes, yeah.
So a challenge that we have with our tenants specifically, and we range from mom and pop retail all the way to the big corporate retail. And what I love about our ownership is we have a model that allows us to be really agile to set up partnerships with them to make sure everybody's successful and that we can all thrive together, because all retail at all levels is important and makes us unique. But I think what's important is when you look at especially POS systems across the entire property, everybody has a different POS system. So it's really hard for us to integrate from a payment perspective with all of our retailers, but we can look at different layers that we can put and work on together. We have an interesting promotion, and it is the kickoff to the holiday season today, just so you guys know. Santa is coming to Mall America, so it's our Super Bowl, and it's an exciting time for retail. But we look at how can we leverage our property to help drive traffic to our retailers. So during the holiday season, hopefully most of you guys know, because we've had it for years, we have a $250 promotion. So every $250 you purchase at the mall, no matter, it's cumulative across all the different stores that you shop at, we'll reward you with over $50 of attraction passes. So most often people get Nickelodeon passes, but that's a lot of value for the purchase that you make at the mall. And what we're doing is we're leveraging our theme park, which we own and operate, and giving away those passes to help drive business to our retailers. And so we're constantly looking at those type of programs where we can work together to drive traffic not only to the mall, but to Minnesota as far as, and we also work with our travel partners, with the CVBs, with the chambers, with all of, like, even from a US perspective, to drive people to Minnesota for the overall experience. So shopping is the #1 leisure activity when you look at travel behavior, but when you can package that in with the outdoors and with the pro sports and culture and entertainment, it's a pretty awesome package that we can offer here. And so the key is always working together collaboratively, even with our attractions. We have attraction passes where guests can pick and choose the different passes and find savings and then be able to experience. So we obviously want people to stay longer when they come to this region so that they stay in the hotels and shop and dine and even outside the mall. And so it's important for us to package things together to support our partners as much as we can.
Tami, same question to you. I mean, when I think of retailer, if you ask a retailer who the most important partner is, they're going to tell you their supplier, but not far behind that is going to be their financial partner. I mean, that's a key component that really makes things work together. So as a financial provider, what are some of the things that you do to help your clients, your retail clients, succeed?
Yeah, there's a couple different prongs there. In terms of, on the one side, there's transactional capabilities and payment efficiencies that we can help with and that we seek to do. So everything from, the virtual vault I talked about earlier, we know that, retailers are struggling with staffing and staff shortages, and if you're an owner-operator and you're there, we know you can't necessarily get away all that easily. So we're exploring lots of different options to ease up that kind of deposit process. It's all back to meeting that customer where they are. And then I talked earlier too about the segment specialization, and we actually have teams of people across our enterprise who are digging deep and can act as a consultant and talk with you on how to really improve things like cash flow and things that are much higher than just depositing a few dollars here and there. That's often how people think of a bank. And we have got people who can show up in a consultative manner, and we show up for free. We don't charge you thousands and thousands of dollars like Arthur Andersen or the Accentures of the world. So we're happy to help consult on your strategies for a rising rate environment, happy to help in consulting on a lot of different financial topics that are above and beyond just remote depositing some checks or how to more efficiently get your money into your account. We're good at that. We've been doing that a long time. It's the extra step of consultation that we're really pursuing.
And Sandy, maybe just a different question for you, just thinking in terms of generations. Let's talk about generations a little bit, because I think it's easy to stereotype generations, right? My mom is on social media, but she doesn't like to buy things. She's 80 years old. Sorry, she's 75 years old. Missed out. My kids are fearful of nothing. Like, they are not fearful of identity theft or anything. They're willing to do whatever makes sense and is fun at the moment. So just talk about retail in terms of generations and how you might use technology to appeal to each of those different types of generations.
Well, and I think that when a customer comes into our store, whether it's virtually or over the phone or walks in, even with their walker or whatever, on the different generations, they let us know how they want to be communicated to. And whether they want to have the mobile app, whether they want us to handhold them and do their seats, and everything, we can provide the different generations. We have a lot of people come in and they've printed something off the internet that they thought was the best package in the world, and I'm like, really? That hotel's been closed for 6 months. You have to, the ones that are fearless, you really need to be aware of the expertise that we can bring to the table. That's the human factor. So we're not just somebody's just buying something that had a real pretty website. So in terms of technology from my vendors, they give me the ability not to have to pay for something the minute you push the button, because we have a relationship with them, so we can work with the customer and make sure. So they provided that technology for us. For me as a retailer, is my secret sauce is my people. And I can't have them all under one roof because they may live up north or they have a different expertise that I can't find in my community. So with technology, we're able to handle a consumer over the phone on the internet, and they're getting the service that they are expected to get because this person is so special but doesn't live in Minneapolis, somewhere else in Minnesota or in another state sometimes. But so those are the kind of the technology that really helps make our product a deliverable. But we do have to identify right away how that person wants to be communicated to, and we can handle any generations.
Nice.
Yeah.
Tami, generational differences, what's your observation?
Yeah, somewhere along the way, Bremer got kind of known as this very stable but very boring bank. So, as such, we attracted a very stable and solid core customer base. We're known for having a pretty, aged customer base, and that can be a challenge. It's people like my mom, and they're a great, solid foundation of customers, but they're not going to be around forever, and their children have different ideas. So we've got some pockets of our customer base who don't want to adopt technology, and we can't force it. You would be surprised the number of even millennials and Gen Zers we're encountering, though, who are scared to manage their money with a mobile app. They'll do just about anything else. They won't flinch at buying merchandise with using their money on Amazon, But the mobile app itself is something that they don't want the tie, a digital tie on their phone to their bank account. So we've got objections where you don't expect it across the generations. And the other thing, being super relationship focused as a bank, we're definitely about our people are our brand, and we're embracing digital, where we need it. The other kind of misnomer we find about millennials is, yeah, they do want to deposit their check by phone, the ones who adopt mobile, but they like to have access to subject matter experts. Like, I'm a grizzled Gen Xer. I was a latchkey kid. I was set free as a child, and I'm pretty damn independent. And the millennials were raised differently. It's the first generation raised by people like me who are helicopter parents to some extent, and they need some reassurance. They need, advice. So if it's something complex and they think that they're maybe in over their head, they need some consultation. And so we're able to provide everything from, that gamut of services, from do this with your phone or do this on your desktop, all the way up to, we've got mortgage lenders and wealth advisors and business bankers who will walk you through every step of a complex, complicated transaction. And those are spaces where we want to fill that whole range. From a retail, business to consumer type of thing, we know as Bremer we're not going to be the fanciest, sexiest tech provider. But we do know we're going to give you the right nuts and bolts that are going to meet you where you are, but we're going to bring extra knowledge and advice to you that hopefully other places maybe aren't going to give you. So it'll set us apart.
Jill, same question to you. Just what's your observation on millennials and how they interact in the retail environment, and how do we do a better job servicing them?
That's a loaded question.
It is.
It's an interesting generation, and I think what's great about the malls, we have something for everyone, but it also makes it challenging because you have to have the flexibility and you have to have the tools that can connect with all those different groups. And when I had the example of the digital directories before, we still maintain a printed directory for that audience that wants that printed piece. But then you have the digital directories, you have the social content, you have robotics, so you can really, you still have the same content and it's thread throughout the whole system, but you have different touch points that will accommodate those different generations. Specifically about millennials and Gen Z, that's our future. So it's really important for us to embrace them and to really listen to them and understand what they want. It's not always what we want. We really have to learn about what our goals and objectives are and then listen to them and then find a common ground of how we can merge together. I had a very eye-opening experience this weekend. We had a new store open called Morphe. It's a beauty brand, brand new store outside Nordstrom. And they brought a beauty influencer in by the name of James Charles. So some of you are nodding your head. So if you were crazy enough to either come out or know someone that came out, there were 5,000 fans that came out for this individual. So the crazy part of this is our team is on tap with trends and who's who and what's happening. Not one of us, and I would exclude myself because I'm old compared to the rest of the team, but we have a lot of 20-somethings that know what is going on. No one knew this name, and it was eye-opening for us because as soon as those of us that had kids went home and mentioned this name, immediately, oh yeah, Mom, that's James Charles. Like, he's a YouTube star. He's, a beauty influencer. So it was this aha moment where I'm like, we think we know who we can bring into the mall that's going to drive the traffic. But when I started, it was about pop stars, and it was authors, and it was HGTV chefs, and we would drive out the crowds. And we know we still need to have the programming across the generations. But what's celebrity now is so different than what it was even 5 years ago. And you have these self-proclaimed celebrities that are driving this audience in, but it was a reminder that don't get too far away from your customer. Make sure you know what they want and who they want to see. And it was just amazing because this is a celebrity that has never been in a movie or on TV. And it truly is the power of the internet and being able to merge those efforts with the brands that we work with. It's really important to know your customer and what they want.
So just thinking for a moment, since you have the microphone still, I know you talked about retail as an experience, but here's the great thing about retail in Minnesota. We really do focus on it being an experience. That doesn't matter if it's online or in a store. Like, that's one of the unique things about being a retailer here is we really think about things from the customer perspective and how the customer is going to process. So as an example, I'm kind of predictable. I want the same thing for Christmas every year, so my wife buys me the same gift card from the same store. This is a small store. It's a one-store operation that I just happen to like to shop at. And they decided at one point it was too expensive to tie kind of their online e-commerce site with their gift card system. So they do something that I call mimicking, and this is a great lesson for small retailers in the room. There are a lot of things you can do to mimic some of the great things that you hear from a best practice standpoint. So when I go to purchase online, I still enter my credit card, but I enter the extra field, which is my gift card number. And so they manually, if that's filled in, they manually take that offline and they process my transaction via gift card. So I still get the experience of using my gift card in an online store for a single store operator. So there's all these great customer experience things we do here in Minnesota to make sure we're meeting the customer. Talk just a little bit about customer experience, and I know you kind of already touched on this, but why is it important from a technology perspective to provide that amazing experience to your customer? And here's the one thing. Actually, tonight, if you're laying in bed, it's midnight, you can't sleep, and you've checked your social media, just for fun, go to the Mall of America feed and look at the comments that Jill's staff sends back to people, because here's what you're going to see. I'm going to the mall to celebrate my 13-year-old birthday with my 3 friends. And you're going to get this genuine response from her social media team. And it doesn't matter what size of retailer you are. You might not provide that in a minute and a half, but you can still provide that type of response. But just tell us a little bit, kind of again, that customer experience side and technology, how's that blending together for you?
I think the key is that you can't let technology drive the experience. It needs to support it, and it needs to be a tool to activate it, but you have to have the genuine human touch, to Bruce's point. And we haven't yet, and we'll push strong not to ever allow marketing and advertising drive the guest experience. So when I talked about ESP and the Communication Command Center, that's not driven by advertising dollars. We empower our team to be very genuine in their responses. So we're not getting $10,000 from Macy's to be plugging ads for them and making sure that you go shop at Macy's. If you ask for the favorite place to go get ice cream, our team, you'll get different answers from different team members, because they will tell you genuinely what their favorite ice. They'll say, go to Cold Stone, get the strawberry cheesecake and get it in a waffle cone because it's amazing. Like, they will authentically give you an answer. And people, you can be very transparent, and people recognize that, and they love the genuine nature of it. We are always looking at technology of how it can be a toolkit through the property, and it's a remote control to just help you navigate and make things easier, reduce those pain points, reduce anxiety, so that when you're in the mall, we want you to be looking up. We want you to experience the mall. We want you to walk into Nickelodeon Universe for the first time and have that and that wow that you're going to experience, because that's what it's all about, and that's why we want people to come to the physical space, because it's about the experience. But I can't express more that it's about being genuine and just really being meaningful with your customers, and giving them answers that comes from the heart, not driven by dollars that are being paid for advertising. There's a time and a place for that, and there's ways to do it that are very authentic and meaningful.
Great perspective. Tami, I'm actually going to switch the question up for you, because we're getting close to when we're going to open up for payment technologies and payment. Like, gone are the days when we traded a chicken for a fence post, right? That was a long time ago.
I just did that last week.
Right. We evolved into cash, then we evolved into checks, then we evolved into credit cards and debit cards, and now we're on this like new path toward probably something new, but still tied back to our old systems. What do you see there for retailers?
Oh, yeah. Obviously, digital wallet. We've all seen Samsung Pay, Apple Pay, Android Pay, all of those things. Those are, taking off, and every bank has to do a lot of behind-the-scenes minutia and project work to get any one of those to function for the bank. And so, we've been challenged with staying on trend as those things are coming up. Also, we're coming up to a kind of a cashless world where we've got a lot of millennials and Gen Zers who frankly would prefer to never visit an ATM ever again and never carry cash ever. And how to do that and how to handle virtual cash. And so there's services around virtual ATM that are being explored. There's peer-to-peer payment, which is things like Zelle, if anyone uses Zelle out there, and it used to be called SurePay at some of the providers. And those are kind of changing the game, and where retailers might be in the mix on that kind of payment. Small businesses and Etsy's out there might be starting to accept Zelle for payment and using a true peer-to-peer. And so we're moving the money onto very different rails, and it's constantly changing, and we've pretty much got a project team at any given moment working on a new payment technology for the bank.
Sandy, we'll end our formal part with you. What's the coolest technology thing you do for your customers right now? What's the thing that you think makes the most difference, or is the most practical, or just works really well for you?
I think social media is really fun when you can share pictures and family experiences, and I think that just goes so wonderful with what we do. And we really love to see what our product is, because you can't touch and feel it like you can the products at the Mall of America. It's our experiential travel. So when our clients share their pictures on social media, and we keep it in a good place, and we make sure our feed is wonderful, it's a good thing. I want to go back to that last question. I had my aha moment a few weeks ago. We held an event, and this woman's going on a honeymoon, and she goes, where should I go on my honeymoon? And I said, well, there's these great places you can go. And she goes, well, and I go, what do you want to do? She goes, well, it's got to be Instagrammable. That was for her honeymoon. So that's why I just thought, oh, I need to understand that. And so you're going to hashtag honeymoon everywhere. So I thought that was an interesting thing.
That is good. Yeah.
But we do like to share the photos. I think for technology, of course, the operations are very important, and we have to have the highest level of, my budget for technology is the most important budget. So, and again, it is real important to make sure client data is secure is number one. That's the most important thing I can say for my customers, is they know we're safe. So.
Great. We're going to go to your questions, but 2 quick comments. I will say my 22-year-old decides where she goes to from a restaurant perspective based on how the picture of her food is going to look, which I still don't quite understand, but if you own a restaurant, your food has to look really, really good right now. And then I also just want to mention, you just touched on a part that's really, it's like a whole half day on its own, and that is privacy and data security. And I will tell you, retailers are working really, really hard in that area. One thing we know is when you're in the store or shopping, you want us to know everything about you to make it the best experience possible. And we know when you leave the store, you want us to know nothing about you. And that is a great challenge that we're meeting head on, and we love it. But again, it's like a whole different half day on its own. Anyway, okay, questions from the audience? Yes.
Okay, my question is actually for Jill. I'm curious as to, for your ESP unit, like it's kind of twofold. What size team do you have that's doing that during the person-to-person hours? And then the second part of my question is, obviously there's a lot of positive questions, a lot of feedback questions that come, but then there's also sometimes some negativity that comes in. How do you determine how you interact with that guest, and is there a time where you ever take that offline?
Great question. So first part of it is, how big is our staff? We've definitely grown over the years, and we're looking to continue to grow in that area because it's something that's really important for our brand and for our company. And we work really closely with the retailers as well. So as we're putting content out, the retailers jump on board, and it's a great collaboration, especially around events and things that we're doing. We started with probably only 2 people in ESP with 1 manager, and now we're up to 6. ESP, and we call them digital service agents, and then we still have a manager, and we're probably going to add 2 additional ones, because we need to have, on the weekends is obviously when we have the most interaction, and so we need to make sure that we can accommodate and also give them time off, but we also encourage them to get up and in the mall. Bruce made a comment about, giving shout outs for birthdays. We actually, as soon as we know that there's special celebrations, or if somebody's landing at the airport, we'll be like, come on over, we'd love to see you. And we will physically go meet them, let's say right outside Nordstrom Court, and give them a gift card and say happy birthday, and we want to make sure you have a great day on us, or give them some ride passes, or just make it really special. But it's really looking at what the demand is and making sure that you can deliver a great experience and having that staff needed. The other question is about, content. It's not always positive, and absolutely, we have people that love the mall, but we also have people that have challenges. Whether you're having just a bad day and you had terrible experience with a store manager that we need to try to connect up with that manager and make sure we make it good before they leave, or it could be a security situation. But what's great is the proximity of our command center is adjacent to our emergency operating center as well as our dispatch center. And it's really important for those teams to be very close to each other so that they can be in constant communication. We've had situations where there's been a fire in a car in one of our ramps, and we literally, the guest had posted it on social media and tagged local media outlets to make sure they could get part of the news. Well, by the time we got that information, we were able to quickly deploy our bike officers, take care of the fire before anything. It was just a small contained fire, but we were able to then regroup with the media and saying there is no big deal. It doesn't need to turn into a story, especially if it's a slow news day. We don't need to make this headlines. But as far as but then there's negative comments where sometimes as a brand you need to organically let it just take care of itself. You don't always have to respond to every inquiry. It's amazing how your champions and your brand loyalists will come to the table for you and allow it to kind of cipher out. But there's a time and a place, and you really have to learn when you need to have a voice and where you can sometimes just take a step back and let it just filter out on its own.
Your question did remind me, there's a lot you can control from a technology perspective, but then there's technology things you can't, like customer reviews. Do either of you have comments on customer reviews and how you handle maybe things that come up that you wish didn't?
Nobody posts a positive customer review of a bank. No, they come out and they post reviews, but you get some brand champions, and there are some small banks that have 5.0 ratings, and you do question the validity of it. So we're in an industry of a lot of data privacy, and we can't share much about. You're complaining that you got an overdraft charge on your account. That's not a discussion we even can have on social media. Right. So we're kind of in a different space. We do stay true to an authentic response, but we have to take those kinds of things offline immediately. And so when those pop up into our inboxes, and we've got a customer service team waiting to handle our social media complaints as we take them offline, but every one of them gets personal attention. Thankfully, we haven't had anything turn into any sort of a media blow up. But you do see there will be people, your brand advocates will swoop in here and there. But by and large, we have to treat people person to person, and it all goes offline.
Just a quick note with that, I just think it's important to read those reviews. You have to be careful, and you don't want to get lost in them, but it's important to listen to your customers. You're going to learn a lot of stuff that you don't know about, and especially if you see some repetitive nature in some of the comments that are made. They're things that sometimes you get too close to your brand, and when you live and breathe it every day, it's nice to have that outside perspective and really understand what pain points. If we hear tons of complaints, and we do about traffic and parking, we're doing things and measures to try to take away those pain points. We've deployed a park assist program. You're going to start seeing it at the mall, where we have the light indicators, where they're red and green, where we can really see where there's spaces available. And so you learn about pain points through those complaints. You're going to have the ones that people that just have extra time on their hands that just want to complain about everything, but for the most part you can learn a lot, and I think it's important to take the time to cipher through those reviews.
Is there anything to add on that?
Reviews are real important in our industry. Being in the hospitality industry, we really take it seriously. I think everybody knows TripAdvisor, and they make decisions on it, which sometimes I use it as a reference, but I'm challenged by some of it because some of the people are reviewing are from different cultures that maybe have different expectations. American standards are a little bit higher than some cultures, and if we have something about us, we will respond and try to correct it, because there's so many things that can go wrong on a trip that we aren't aware of, and we actually really champion getting reviews because it makes us better.
Other questions? Yes.
So we're an IT service provider, and historically we have a difficult time getting retailers to invest in their technology.
Yes.
Where are you seeing that retailers are open to making those investments?
So just briefly, from a macro level, and I think Sandy mentioned it earlier, retailers tend to be most receptive when you're taking some of the risk and helping on the front end until they sort of understand and see the value of it demonstrated. So I will say, I shouldn't say this, but Retailers are cheap, and the reason they're cheap is they want to provide goods and services to their customers at the lowest price possible. So sometimes you get squeezed in that, there's no doubt about it. But I think what I tend to see is service providers who put a little skin in the game themselves to make it a little easier for a retailer to step into it. That's where you tend to see those successful partnerships. And when it works, quite frankly, I think retailers are happy to then step up and support it at a level which they should. But it does take some work on your part, absolutely.
Well, and to add to that, as a business owner, that's a hat that, you know, I didn't really have. You know, I come from the data cards, you know, back in the day, but I was challenged by that. And so much of it was I didn't have the trust because I didn't understand it. And so much of it, giving back is educating, like you had said. The other thing is because everybody's software and hardware, they all talk to each other differently, and there's different operating systems, and you really need to stay on top of all of that. And if you've got a technology support person that comes in and spends 3 hours trying to learn what you guys actually do, because people really don't know what our retail business does, maybe, that all of a sudden I'm being charged for 3 hours while they're learning. So I think it's the trust thing for me, and once I found a technology person, he's like my best friend. He's at our Christmas parties, you know, that is so important. So, and for me, and especially my business is so technology orientated in terms of the actual purchase, it's important to spend the money on that.
Well, and in banking, we're investing heavily in all things technology. So, you know, and Bremer's not alone in forging partnerships out in Silicon Valley with, you know, technology incubators and trying to actually get ahead of the fintech disruption that is happening. So we're really good at keeping our daily lights on, but the investments that we are making are really forward thinking in technology. And, you know, we recently partnered with Beta Backers MN and Twin Cities Startup Week. We're looking for the next kind of cool, great thing that can integrate with our stuff and serve our customers the right way. And to be on the forefront of that is really important. And that's where our technology investment's largely going. But, you know, I know we've got probably a different balance sheet and cost structure than a typical retailer. So that's why you'll see the spend being very different for us.
Yeah. The one thing I would add, and I think this goes across all industries, is, and for a partner to come in to work with brands, no matter what level it is, really helping paint the picture of what the end result will be. I know we really struggled. A lot of the infrastructure is not sexy, and it's really hard to sell to ownership when there's huge tickets. When we looked at our Wi-Fi infrastructure for the mall, it was just kind of like, how much is that going to cost? And the key is we had to create a visualization of what it would do in the long run. So what is that going to mean to consumers? Once we have that plumbing in place, what does that allow us to do that are those sexy pieces on the outside, those touch points that allow us to have digital directories or be able to activate? Consumers are expecting to be connected and having you know, the wireless infrastructure in place because it is everywhere now. And so for all businesses to take that into account, but knowing that that investment up front allows you to have the shiny objects on the back end is what's important, but to be able to paint that picture, we literally created a vision video that had futuristic type of elements that helped show our ownership group of what was possible once we had the plumbing in place. And it really helped illustrate for them what this investment would mean on the front end, what we could do in years to come. And I mean, now we've been just skyrocketing what we've been able to do from an innovation standpoint because we made that investment. But when we have partners that help visualize that and help bring us to the finish line, it's a much easier partnership versus here's a vendor that wants you to just pay the bill. It's truly changing things together.
And just to wrap that up, you know, Groupon kind of changed things for service providers. Now, you might provide IT infrastructure, and this might not apply to you, but let's say you sold e-commerce. Groupon kind of changed things for retailers a little bit because there was somebody who said, what they didn't do is they didn't come and say, how about for $5,000, I'll build you an e-commerce website where you can offer deals. They said, how about we build the infrastructure and we own it, and we take care of it, and your risk is mitigated, but you cut us in on the deal. And I think, you know, when you talk about some of those things, there's a little bit of a partnership mentality that we're kind of getting used to a little bit. So it does generally mean sometimes as a service provider you have to extend yourself a little bit and figure out how you work with multiple retailers to have something make sense. Yep. I call it the Groupon Effect. One more question. Time for one more question.
What are you guys most excited about technologically?
Most excited.
Oh.
It's kind of micro, but I'm really interested to see how voice activation is going to change how we shop in our homes and in our cars and just outside. And it's interesting to see how brands are starting to work with smart home technology, and they have these long skills where I don't know how they think consumers are going to remember how you to activate Alexa when you have to say this 3-paragraph skill. But when it starts to become more intuitive and people get beyond using the 5 skills of, turning on for music, a timer, shopping list, the basics, once we get beyond that, there's some really exciting things that I think are going to happen. And so it's just figuring out how consumers are going to use those devices. But voice activation is definitely something that we're working on, but I think a lot of brands are starting to play around with, just as more and more of them come out in the field, especially this holiday season. It's definitely going to be a gift idea that most people are going to have on their list. But it's fun, and it makes it convenient because you can multitask in what you're doing, but it's just testing things out and see what people are going to adopt.
Reminds me, the Alexa-enabled microwave comes out on November 14th.
Fantastic.
Anybody pre-bought that yet? Okay, just checking.
School stuff.
I'm going to go super data nerdy. I'm fascinated about the changes in data architecture and how we're structuring data on the back end to enable our technologies, because banks are behind the scenes, we have these legacy core systems that are ugly and huge and so entrenched, and it's every bank has this. And now we're finding, there's new things beyond database marketing and ways to structure data that are helping us do true to one-to-one and helping us get to points of unique customer journeys that we've never had the ability to do before. So the real lifeblood of that is the data, and that excites me, and I'm a nerd.
And artificial intelligence is what this is, and that's definitely exciting for me, and we have to figure out how to embrace it to make sure the customer experience traveling is, going to the airport and walking through and not having to go through security, or I call them the superhuman tricks, and getting on the airplane and you have the same seat because that airline knows you very well. Things like that. How do I embrace that to make sure? Maybe have somebody walk through their honeymoon. Well, it's parts of it, and walk through their honeymoon before they get there, and add certain, so I can tell what they really want because they're communicating with me by going through the artificial intelligence. So that's really exciting.
And Kim, I'll end on that by one of the things I'm most excited about isn't necessarily the widgets and the things and the gizmos. It's actually the careers that we're seeing in retail now. So retail's still a great entry-level position. There's still a lot of great careers, but today more than ever we're seeing more great jobs, high-paying jobs in logistics and technology because of the things that folks up here are using. So I think that's while the technology is exciting and I really like it, the opportunities that's kind of fueling in the retail sector, I think is something we're really proud of and what excites me most. Good question. So with that, thanks so much for coming out today. Pat, are you going to close this up?
Yeah.
All right.
All right, so let's give a round of applause to our panelists. Great program. My name is Pat McQueenie. I'm the president of the Eden Prairie Chamber of Commerce, and I get to go last, I guess. I got a captive audience. Well, it's our hope that you enjoy the program, gain some knowledge, information, some insight in one of our key sectors in Minnesota for businesses. Would like to thank my colleagues as well for a great program for 2018. With that, I'll wrap it up by saying thank you again for being here today and enjoy your afternoon.